The stars had always been cold and silent, but on this day they watched as the greatest mistake in galactic history was about to be made. High Commander Therak stood on the bridge of the Dominion flagship Eternal Conquest. He was tall for a Belviltrani, his blue gray skin stretched tight over angular bones. His four eyes scanned the massive viewscreen before him, and what he saw made him smile. The Sol system, home of the humans, his next conquest, the Veltrani Dominion, had ruled the outer spiral arm for 3,000 years. They had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed rebellions, absorbed lesser species, and built an empire that stretched across 100 worlds. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever even slowed them down. And now they had come for Earth. Status report. Therak commanded. His voice echoed through the bridge where dozens of Velroni officers worked at their stations. We have entered the outer boundary of the Sol system. High Commander, reported his second officer, a younger Throni named Kesix. Long-range sensors detect human defense stations around the fourth planet. Their fleet appears to be gathering near the third planet, the one they call Earth. The nodded slowly. He had studied the humans for months before this invasion. They were a curious species. They had only discovered faster than light travel. 200 years ago, they had spread to a handful of colonies in their own system and a few nearby stars. They were young. They were weak. They were divided into dozens of nations that argued constantly among themselves. Easy prey. Any communications from the humans? The asked. Yes, High Commander, we received a transmission the moment we crossed into their space. It was sent on all frequencies. Show me. The view screen flickered. A human female appeared. She had dark skin and gray hair, and she wore a military uniform covered in metals. Her eyes were hard and cold like stones. At the bottom of a frozen river. Attention, unidentified fleet, the woman said. Her voice was calm and steady. This is Admiral Chen Wei of the United Earth Defense Council. You have entered human space without permission. We do not know your intentions, but we are willing to discuss them peacefully. However, I must make something very clear. She paused. Her eyes seemed to look directly at the even though it was just a recording. Turn back. This is your only warning. We do not wish for conflict, but we will not submit. If you proceed with hostile intentions, there will be no negotiation. No surrender will be accepted. No mercy will be given. You have been warned. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Therak began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle and grew into a deep rolling laugh that filled the entire command center. His officers looked at each other nervously, then began to laugh as well. Did you hear that? The said, wiping his eyes. No mercy will be given from a species that cannot even agree on a single government, from a race that has been traveling between stars for barely 2 centuries. They threaten us. Belthrani Dominion, conquerors of 17 systems. It is amusing, High Commander. Kesix agreed. Shall I send a response? No, there is no need to waste words on prey. They will learn soon enough what happens to those who defy the Dominion. But not everyone on the bridge was laughing. In the corner, a soft blue light pulsed on a terminal. This was the interface for the Dominion's ancient artificial intelligence, a system called the Oracle. It had been created by the First Velroni scientists over 5,000 years ago, it had advised every high commander since the beginning of the empire, and it had never been wrong. High Commander, the oracle spoke. Its voice was soft, almost like a whisper. I have completed my analysis of the human species. I advise caution. The laughter faded. He walked over to the terminal and looked at the glowing light with annoyance. Caution against these primitives. Explain yourself. The humans are classified as a persistence class. Predator species. The oracle said this is a rare and dangerous designation. In the entire history of my observations, I have encountered only 3 other species with this classification. 2 of them no longer exist. The third is considered too dangerous to contact. Thy frowned. What does this classification mean? It means that humans did not evolve as ambush predators or speed predators like most intelligent species. They evolved as pursuit predators. Their ancestors did not catch prey by being faster or stronger. They caught prey by following it for hours, for days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion, until it could no longer run, until it simply gave up and died. That is interesting, they admitted, but we are not prey animals. We are the Velroni. We have warships. We have weapons that can crack planets. You misunderstand, the oracle said. The pursuit predator strategy is not just about physical endurance. It is about psychology. Humans do not give up. They do not forget. They do not stop. If you harm them, they will pursue you until one of you is destroyed. This is not a conscious choice. It is programmed into their very biology. Kesich stepped forward. High Commander, surely this is an exaggeration. The humans have fought wars among themselves for their entire history. They always stop eventually. They always make peace. That is correct. The oracle said, humans make peace with other humans. They see other humans as part of their group even when they fight. But you are not human. You are outside their group, and humans treat outsiders who attack them very differently than they treat each other. Theorek was growing impatient. Enough. I did not come here to listen to warnings about human psychology. I came here to conquer their worlds and add their resources to our empire. That is what we will do. Then I must formally register my advice against this action. The oracle said, the probability of long-term success against a motivated human resistance is extremely low. I recommend withdrawing from the system and seeking conquest elsewhere. Your advice is noted and rejected. The said coldly, we will proceed as planned. Signal the fleet. We advance on the human colonies. The oracle's light pulsed once more, then went dark. It had given its warning. It could do no more. The Velroni fleet moved deeper into the Sol system. There were over 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons. They moved in perfect formation, a wall of metal and fire that had never known defeat. The humans did not attack. They watched. They waited. They sent more messages asking for talks, asking for peace. Thyrek ignored them all. On the 5th day, the fleet reached the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets. Here the humans had built their largest mining colonies. Massive stations floated among the rocks, home to millions of workers and their families. Children played in zero-gravity parks. Families ate dinner together in rotating habitats. Scientists studied the stars. Workers extracted minerals that powered human civilization, the looked at these stations on his view screen. He saw them not as homes but as targets. Hi. Commander Kesich said, our scouts report that the human fleet is still gathered near Earth. They are not coming to defend these colonies. Of course not. The said they are cowards. They are protecting their home world and abandoning their people. What are your orders? They considered for a moment. The smartest move would be to bypass these stations and strike directly at Earth. But he wanted to send a message. He wanted the humans to understand exactly what they were dealing with. He wanted them to feel fear before he crushed them completely. Destroy the colonies, he ordered. Kesich hesitated. All of them. High Commander, there are civilian targets, women, children. The galactic conventions. The galactic conventions apply to civilized species. Thier interrupted. Humans have not yet earned that status. They are being offered a place in our empire and they have refused. They must learn the cost of refusal. Destroy the colonies, all of them. Make sure that humans see it happen. The order was given. The Veltrani fleet opened fire. The asteroid stations had some defenses. Small weapons designed to break apart incoming rocks, shield generators that could stop a meteor impact. But against 300 warships they were nothing. The first station exploded in a ball of orange flame, then the second, then the third. One by one the colonies died. Escape pods launched, but the Velroni ships shot most of them down. A few managed to flee into the darkness, carrying witnesses who would tell the galaxy what had happened here. When it was over, 2.3 million humans were dead. Miners, scientists, teachers, children. Entire families erased in moments. The asteroid belt was filled with debris and frozen bodies floating among the rocks. They watched it all with satisfaction. This was how the Dominion operated. Swift, brutal, absolute. Now the humans would understand their situation. Now they would surrender and beg for mercy. He waited for the transmission, the white flag, the tearful pleas for peace. Instead, something else happened. Every screen on every ship in the Veltrani fleet flickered at the same moment. The face of Admiral Chen Wei appeared again, but she looked different. Now, the calm professionalism was gone. Her eyes burned with something that Thurk had never seen before, something that made his stomach feel suddenly cold. You were warned, she said. That was all, just 3 words. Then the screens went dark. They stared at the blank view screen. He waited for more. Declaration of war, a promise of revenge, something, but there was only silence. High Commander Kesich asked nervously, what does this mean? Before they could answer, alarms began to sound. Across the bridge, officers shouted reports over each other, their voices rising in confusion and fear. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Human ships emerging from behind the outer planets. They were hiding. High Commander, they were hiding and waiting. The rush to the tactical display. What he saw made his 4 eyes go wide. Human fleet had not been gathered at Earth. That had been a decoy. The real fleet had been scattered throughout the system, hidden behind moons and gas giants, waiting for the Throni to commit, and now they were attacking. Human ships poured out of the darkness. From every direction, they were smaller Thani warships, but there were thousands of them. They moved with a speed and coordination that should have been impossible for such a young species. All ships, battle formation, the commanded. Prepare to, the first wave of human Missiles struck before he could finish. The HFY cruiser Iron Will exploded. Then the destroyer Conquest Pride, then 3 more ships in rapid succession. The battle lasted only 2 hours. The Belthrani fleet was not destroyed, but it was badly damaged. Over 50 ships were lost. Thousands of Vethrani soldiers were dead, and then as quickly as they had appeared, the humans withdrew. They did not press their advantage. They did not pursue the retreating HFY ships. They simply vanished back into the darkness of the system. They stood on his damaged bridge, breathing heavily. Fires burned in several sections of the Eternal Conquest. Half of his bridge crew was dead or wounded. What was that? Kessex whispered. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. That was a warning, they said slowly. That was them showing us what they can do. High Commander, we should retreat. We should regroup. And no, Thyra's voice was hard. We are the Belthrani. We do not run from primitive species. We will call for reinforcements. We will crush these humans completely. I want every ship we have sent to this system, every soldier, every weapon. We will burn their home world to ash. The Oracle's terminal flickered to life. High Commander, I must once again advise. Silence, the screamed. He grabbed a piece of debris and threw it at the terminal. The blue light went dark. Over the next several weeks, the Velroni reinforced their fleet. Ships came from across the Dominion. The force that had invaded Sol system tripled in size. The was confident again. He had underestimated the humans once. He would not do so again. This time he would crush them with overwhelming force. But while he was building his fleet, something else was happening. On Earth, the nations of humanity were setting aside their differences. Leaders who had argued for decades now sat together in the same room. Enemies became allies. Rivals became brothers. For the first time in human history, the entire species was unified by a single purpose. The footage of the asteroid colonies was played on every screen on every world. People watched their fellow humans die. They watched children's bodies floating in the void of space. They watched escape pods being shot down by laughing gunners. And something changed in humanity. Something deep and old and terrible woke up inside them. A feeling that came from millions of years of evolution. A feeling that had driven their ancestors across continents and oceans. A feeling that had made them the dominant species on their world. The need to hunt, the need to pursue, the need to destroy the thing that had hurt them. The human leaders did not talk about peace anymore. They did not talk about negotiation. They talked only about what needed to be done. Admiral Chen Wei stood before the United Earth Defense Council. Her voice was cold and steady. They ignored our warning, she said. They killed 2.3 million of our people, men, women, and children. They laughed as they did it. They thought we would be afraid. They thought we would surrender. She paused and looked at each leader in the room. They were wrong. We gave them a chance for peace. We gave them every opportunity to turn back. They chose war. Now they will see what humanity is capable of. We will hunt them across every system they control. We will tear down their empire piece by piece. And when they beg for mercy, she stopped. Her eyes were like ice. We will remember that they gave no mercy to our children. The room was silent. Then one by one, every leader stood and gave their approval. The vote was unanimous. humanity was going to war, not to defend their home, not to protect their borders, to pursue, to destroy, to make certain that the galaxy would never forget what happened to those who harmed humans. In the cold silence of space, the Velroni fleet waited for reinforcements, confident their coming victory. They did not understand what they had awakened, but they would learn. Yuki Tanaka was 67 years old when the colonies burned. She had served in the Earth Defense Force. For 40 years, she had fought in 3 wars between human nations. She had buried friends and enemies alike. She had seen enough death to last 10 lifetimes, but she had never felt rage like this. She stood in her small apartment on Earth watching the footage. On her screen, the asteroid colonies exploding one by one, the escape pods being destroyed, the bodies of children floating in space. Her hands trembled as she watched, but not from fear, from something much older, something much darker. Her daughter had lived on Colony 7, her daughter and her husband and their 2 children, Yuki's grandchildren, a boy of 8 and a girl of 5. She had been planning to visit them next month. She had already bought presents for the children. Now they were gone, frozen corpses drifting among the asteroids, killed by creatures who saw them as nothing more than targets in a demonstration of power. Yuki's phone rang. She answered it without looking away from the screen. Admiral Tanaka. The voice belonged to General Morrison, the head of Earth's military forces. I know this is a difficult time. I know what you have lost, but I need you. What do you need, General? The Council has voted for total war. We are building a fleet unlike anything humanity has ever created. We are going to pursue the Belthrani out of our system and across the galaxy if necessary. We are going to make them pay for what they did. Yuki said nothing. She watched the footage loop again. Colony 7 exploding, her daughter's home becoming a ball of fire. I want you to command the fleet. Morrison said, you have more combat experience than anyone else. You know how to fight a long campaign, and you have. He paused. You have reason to see this through to the end. Yes, Yuki said quietly, I do. Will you accept? Yuki turned off the screen. The images of death vanished, but they remained burned into her mind. They would never leave. She would carry them with her for the rest of her life. Yes, she said again, I will accept, but I need you to understand something, General. If I take this command, I will not stop. I will not negotiate. I will not accept surrender. The Velrani killed my family. They killed millions of families. They laughed while they did it. Now they will learn what happens when you wake the wolf. That is exactly what the Council wants. Morrison said, report to headquarters in 6 hours. We have work to do. Yuki ended the call. She looked around her small apartment, at the pictures of her daughter growing up, at the drawings her grandchildren had sent her, at the life she had built over 67 years. Then she put on her uniform and walked out the door. She did not look back. There was nothing left to look back at. The mobilization of humanity happened faster than anyone thought possible. Within 72 hours, the old arguments between nations were forgotten. The old borders stopped mattering. Presidents and prime ministers who had spent years fighting each other now sat together in the same room, working toward the same goal. Factories that had been making cars and televisions and phones were converted to military production. Assembly lines that had built consumer goods now built missiles. And warships, workers who had never touched a weapon volunteered for the military in numbers that overwhelmed the recruitment centers. Scientists joined the effort too. Physicists who had studied black holes were now designing new weapons. Engineers who had built skyscrapers were now building orbital defense stations. Doctors who had cured diseases were now developing medical technology for combat situations. But the most important resource was something that could not be manufactured. It was the fury of a species that had been attacked without cause. It was the rage of parents who had lost children. It was the hunger for justice that burned in every human heart. The Velroni had called them primitive. They had called them weak. They had laughed at human threats and ignored human warnings. They did not understand what they were dealing with. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. They had developed weapons and tactics and strategies over thousands of years of constant warfare. They had learned how to kill efficiently and without mercy. They had turned violence into an art form. And now, for the first time in history, all of that experience was being directed at a single target. Admiral Tanaka established her headquarters in a massive space station orbiting Earth. She worked 20 hours a day, sleeping only when her body forced her to. She reviewed ship designs. She studied Belthrani tactics. She planned for a war that would span multiple star systems and might last for years. Her staff learned quickly not to mention peace or negotiation. Those words were not allowed in her presence. There was only one goal: the complete destruction of the Velrani military and the permanent end of their empire. Admiral, one of her officers, said during a planning meeting, "We have received another request from the Velrani. They want to negotiate." "What are their terms?" Tanaka asked, without looking up from her tactical displays. "They are offering to withdraw from our system and return all human prisoners. In exchange, they want a treaty guaranteeing that we will not pursue them beyond our borders." Rejected. The officer hesitated. "Admiral, shouldn't we at least consider?" Tanaka looked up. Her eyes were cold and hard. "Lieutenant, how many children were on Colony 7 when it was destroyed?" The officer swallowed. "Approximately 180,000, Admiral. 180,000 children dead because the Velroni wanted to make a point, and now they want to negotiate." Tanaka shook her head. "There will be no negotiation. They were given a chance to avoid this war. They chose to ignore it. Now they will face the consequences." "But Admiral, if we pursue them into their space, then we pursue them into their space and beyond. If necessary, the galaxy needs to learn something today, Lieutenant, something that it has never understood about humanity." "What is that, Admiral?" "That we do not forgive, we do not forget, and we do not stop." The officer nodded and left to send the rejection. The Belthrani would receive no response to their offer, just silence, and then when humanity was ready, they would receive something else entirely. The shipyards worked around the clock. New vessels emerged from construction docks at a rate that shocked even human engineers. These were not ordinary warships. They were designed for one purpose: long-range pursuit and destruction. The human engineers had studied ship designs from the battle. They had found weaknesses, vulnerabilities. Now they were building weapons specifically designed to exploit them. One of these weapons was called The Persistence-class missile, it was small enough to be launched in massive numbers but smart enough to track a target for days or even weeks. Once it locked onto a ship, it would follow that ship forever through hyperspace jumps, through asteroid fields, through defensive screens. It would follow and wait and watch until it found an opening, then it would strike. The Velrani had never seen anything like it. No species had, because no species had ever thought like humans did. No species had ever evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion and despair. 2 months after the destruction of the colonies, the first ships of the Retribution fleet were ready. They were not the largest vessels, they were not the most heavily armed, but they were fast and tough and designed to operate for months without resupply. Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Unrelenting. She looked at the fleet gathered around her. 300 ships, not as many as the Belthrani had. But these were crewed by something more dangerous than mere numbers. They were crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose, humans who had lost families in the colonies, humans who had watched their world attacked and their people murdered, humans who had decided that sleep and comfort and safety meant nothing compared to revenge. All ships, Tanaka said into the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Tanaka. Today we begin our pursuit of the Velrani. I will not promise you an easy victory. This war may last for years. Many of us will not survive, but I promise you this: we will not stop. We will chase them across every system they control. We will tear down their empire star by star, and when we are finished, the galaxy will remember what happens to those who attack humanity. She paused across 300 ships. Crews waited in silence. The THR ignored our warning. Now they will learn what that means. All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. We are going hunting. The fleet vanished into hyperspace. Behind them, Earth continued its transformation into a war machine. More ships, more weapons, more soldiers, an endless stream of resources flowing toward a single purpose. On the THR flagship, High Commander Therak received the news that the humans had rejected his peace offer. He was not surprised. He was not worried. His fleet had been reinforced. He now had over 1,000 warships. The humans could not possibly stand against such force. Let them come, he told his officers. We will crush them here in their own system, then we will take their home world and add their species to our slaves. The Oracle's terminal flickered briefly, but they ignored it. He was done listening to warnings about humans. He had seen them fight. They were fierce. Yes, determined, certainly, but they were still just one species against the greatest empire in the galaxy. What could they possibly do? The answer came 3 weeks later. The Veltrani fleet had established a defensive position near the outer planets of the solar system. They had mined the approach route. They had set up sensor networks. They had prepared for a direct assault. The humans did not give them a direct assault. Instead, they came in small groups, hit-and-run attacks. A few ships would appear, fire missiles at a THR position, then vanish back into hyperspace before the THR could respond. It happened once, then twice, then a dozen times, then 100. The Felthroni could not predict where the next attack would come from. They could not sleep without being awakened by alarms. They could not relax for a single moment. The constant pressure began to wear on them. This is Madness, Keswick said to Theke after yet another sleepless night. They are not trying to win, they are just attacking. Constantly without end, they are trying to tire us out. The said it is a primitive tactic, it will not work, but it was working. The Valroni soldiers were exhausted, their ships were running low on ammunition from constantly responding to threats, their morale was crumbling, and then finally the main human fleet appeared. They came out of hyperspace on the far side of the system, from where the Valroni expected them. They had spent 3 weeks studying Belthrani patrol patterns, learning their blind spots. Now they exploited every weakness they had found. The battle lasted 2 days. The Belthrani had more ships, but the humans had something else. They had rage, they had determination. They had the knowledge that every vessel they destroyed was one less vessel that could hurt human colonies, and they had Admiral Tanaka. She commanded from the bridge of the unrelenting, her voice calm and steady. Even as chaos erupted around her, she moved her ships like pieces on a chessboard, always one step ahead of the Valrani commanders. She found weaknesses in their formation and struck them without mercy. When a human ship was damaged beyond repair, its crew did not surrender. They aimed their vessel at the nearest target and fired their engines at full power, kamikaze attacks that took enemy ships with them. The Velthrani could not understand it. What kind of species would choose death over capture? The answer was simple: species that would never stop hunting its prey. By the end of the second day, the Valroni fleet was broken. Over 400 of their ships were destroyed. The rest fled into hyperspace, retreating to the borders of their empire. The stood on his damaged bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his dead officers. His flagship had barely survived. His fleet was in ruins. His confidence was shattered. High Commander, a communications officer said weakly, "We are receiving a transmission from the human flagship." "Show me, Admiral." Tanaka's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but satisfied. Behind her thorax could see human officers celebrating their victory. "High Commander Theke," Tanaka said, "your fleet has been defeated. You have been driven from our system. According to your own traditions, this war should be over." The Iraq felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps the humans would be satisfied with this victory. Perhaps they would accept a treaty now. "We are willing to discuss terms," he said carefully. "There has been enough death on both sides." Tanaka smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator watching its prey begin to tire. "I did not contact you to discuss peace," she said. "I contacted you to deliver a message. Look at your sensors. Look at what is happening behind your fleet." The Rak turned to his tactical display. What he saw made his blood run cold. Human ships were emerging from hyperspace behind the retreating Valrani fleet, not attacking, just following. Dozens of them, keeping perfect pace with the Valrani vessels. "Those ships will follow you," Tanaka said. "Wherever you go, however far you run, they will be behind you, watching, waiting. And when our main fleet has finished resupplying, we will join them. We will chase you to the heart of your empire and beyond." "This is insanity," Thyrax sputtered. "No species pursues their enemy into their own territory. You have won. Take your victory and be satisfied." "We warned you," Tanaka said. "We asked you to turn back. We gave you every chance to avoid this. You ignored us. You Killed 2.3 million of our people. You killed my daughter, my grandchildren. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes burned with cold fire. Did you think we would simply stop when you ran away? Did you think we would let you escape too? Threaten us again. What do you want, Dak? Demanded. Reparations, territory. Name your price and we will pay it. There is no price, Tanaka said. There is nothing you can offer us. You made your choice when you ignored our warning. Now you will live with the consequences, or more accurately, you will die with them. Please, Therex said. He had never begged before in his life. Please end this. My people do not deserve this. Tanaka leaned forward, her face filled the screen. Neither did mine. The transmission ended. The rack stood alone on his ruined bridge, staring at the blank screen behind his fleeing fleet. Human ships followed like wolves, trailing wounded prey. The war was not over. It had barely begun, and humanity would not stop until it was finished. The Velroni Empire had never known fear. For 3,000 years, they had been the hunters. They had conquered species after species, adding world after world to their dominion. They had built the greatest military force in the galaxy. They had believed themselves invincible. Now they were running. High Commander Therex sat in his damaged quarters aboard the Eternal Conquest, staring at a tactical map of Throni space. Red dots marked every system under his Empire's control. Blue dots marked the advancing human fleet. The blue dots were getting closer every day. It had been 4 months since the Battle of Seoul. 4 months since the humans had broken his fleet and driven him from their system. 4 months since he had expected the war to end. It had not ended. It had only grown worse. The humans did exactly what Admiral Tanaka had promised. They pursued. They followed the retreating Velroni fleet across 3-star systems, never attacking in force, but never falling back either. They were always there, always watching, always waiting. They had tried to lose them. He had made sudden course changes. He had split his fleet into smaller groups. He had even tried hiding in an asteroid field for 2 weeks. Nothing worked. Somehow the humans always found him. Somehow they always caught up. It is impossible, Thorek muttered to himself. They are a young species. They should not be able to do this. They should not have the resources or the technology or the will, but they did, and Thorak was beginning to understand why. The Oracle had tried to tell him. It had warned him about persistence predators. It had explained that humans did not need to be faster or stronger than their prey. They only needed to never stop. They had laughed at the warning. He was not laughing now. A knock at his door pulled him from his thoughts. He straightened his uniform and called for the visitor to enter. It was Kessex, his second officer. The younger Throni looked exhausted. His blue-gray skin had taken on a sickly pale tone. His 4 eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. Hi, Commander, Kessex said. I have the latest intelligence report. Tell me the human fleet is 3 days behind us. They have been reinforced again. We estimate they now have over 500 ships. The closed his eyes. When this war started, the humans had barely 300 vessels. Now they had more than him. How was that possible? How could they build so many ships so quickly? There is more, Kessex continued reluctantly. We have received reports from the outer systems. Human Raiding parties have been attacking our supply convoys. They are using small, fast ships to hit our supply lines and then disappear before we can respond. They are starving us. They realized they are cutting off our supplies while they chase us toward our core worlds. Yes, High Commander, at our current rate of consumption, we will run out of fuel and ammunition within 6 months unless we can resupply at Nexus Prime. Nexus Prime, the largest military base in the VTHR Empire. It was heavily fortified, well supplied and defended by 300 warships. If the Rak could reach it, he could combine his fleet with the garrison and make a stand. How long until we reach Nexus Prime? He asked. 8 weeks at our current speed. And the humans? Kessex hesitated. They will arrive approximately 2 days after we do. Perhaps sooner if they push their engines. The nodded slowly. It would be close, very close, but what choice did he have? He could not run forever. Eventually he would have to turn and fight. Set course for Nexus Prime, he ordered. All ships maximum speed. We make our stand there. Yes, High Commander. Kessex paused at the door. Sir, do you think we can win? Theek looked at the tactical map again, at the blue dots that never stopped moving, at the enemy that never stopped hunting. I do not know, he admitted, but we will find out. The weeks that followed were the worst of Theek's life. The journey to Nexus Prime became a nightmare of constant alerts, sudden attacks, and sleepless nights. The humans had changed their tactics. They were no longer content to simply follow. Now they were actively hunting. Small groups of human ships would appear without warning, launching waves of missiles at the Veltroni fleet before vanishing back into hyperspace. These attacks caused only minor damage, but they happened constantly. Every few hours alarms would sound. Every few hours Veltroni soldiers would rush to battle stations, only to find that the humans had already disappeared. It was maddening. It was exhausting, and it was working. The Rak watched his crew fall apart. Piece by piece, officers who had served with distinction for decades became nervous and jumpy. Soldiers who had never shown fear began to flinch at every unexpected sound. The constant pressure was destroying morale faster than any battle could. They are doing this on purpose, they realized during one of the attacks. They are not trying to destroy us with these raids. They are trying to tire us out. They are trying to break our will before the real battle even begins. It was a brilliant strategy, and it was exactly what the Oracle had warned him about. Persistence. Predators did not need to win quickly. They won by refusing to stop, by wearing down their prey until it could no longer fight. Halfway to Nexus Prime, the Velthroni fleet encountered something unexpected. Other species, a consortium trading convoy was passing through the system. When the Velroni arrived, the consortium was a loose alliance of merchants and traders who did business throughout the galaxy. They were neutral in most conflicts, preferring profit over politics. Theorak ordered his communications officer to hail the convoy. Perhaps he could buy supplies. Perhaps he could learn what the rest of the galaxy thought of this war. The consortium captain who answered the hail was a small furry creature with large eyes and quick movements. He looked nervous the moment he saw Thyra's face. High Commander, the captain said, we are neutral traders. We have no part in your war with the humans. I know. Thor said, I merely wish to purchase supplies, fuel, food, ammunition. Name. Your price. The captain's large eyes darted back and forth. He was clearly uncomfortable. I am sorry, High Commander, we cannot sell to you. Frowned. Why not? We are willing to pay double the standard rate. It is not about money, the captain said. It is about survival. The humans have sent messages to every trading guild in the sector. They have made their position very clear. What position? The captain swallowed nervously. They said that any species who provides aid to the Velroni will be considered an enemy of humanity. They said that they will remember, and they said that when they are finished with the Velthrani, they will come for anyone who helped them. The felt a chill run down his spine. The humans were not just hunting him, they were isolating him, cutting him off from any possible allies. This is madness, where he said, we are at war. Trading during wartime is common, not against humans. The captain said, I am sorry, High Commander, my people have decided that it is safer to lose your business than to make enemies of humanity. Everyone has decided this. The consortium, the free traders, even the outer rim pirates. No one will help you. The transmission ended. They stared at the blank screen in disbelief. The galaxy was afraid, not of the Velroni who had conquered 17 star systems. The galaxy was afraid of humans who had barely been in space for 200 years. What had he awakened? The Velroni fleet limped into Nexus Prime. 8 weeks later, they had lost another 50 ships during the journey, not to major battles but to the constant grinding pressure of human pursuit. Ships that broke down, crews that snapped under stress, officers who made fatal mistakes because they had not slept in days. When Thyrech looked at his fleet, he barely recognized it. These were not the proud warriors who had invaded the Sol system. These were exhausted, frightened survivors, shadows of their former selves. But Nexus Prime gave him hope. The station was massive, bristling with weapons platforms and defensive systems. 300 fresh warships waited in orbit, crewed by soldiers who had not spent months being hunted. Supply warehouses held enough fuel and ammunition to fight a dozen battles. Maybe the thought, maybe here we can turn the tide. The human fleet arrived 2 days later, just as predicted. They stood on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, watching the enemy ships emerge from hyperspace. He had expected 500 vessels, maybe 600 if the humans had been reinforced again. He counted over 1,000. That is impossible, Kessex whispered. They did not have that many ships. They could not have built that many ships. They did, they said quietly. They have been building them since this war began. Every factory on their world, every shipyard, every resource they have, all of it focused on one goal. What do we do, High Commander? Thak looked at his tactical displays. His combined fleet numbered just over 500 ships. The humans had twice that many. The math was simple and brutal, but he had something the humans did not have. He had Nexus Prime. The station's weapons could destroy dozens of ships before they got close. Its shields could withstand almost any bombardment. If he played his cards right, he might be able to even the odds. All ships take up defensive positions around the station. He ordered, we let them come to us. We use the station's firepower to thin their numbers, then we counterattack. It was a good plan, a sound plan, the kind of plan that had worked for the Velroni in 100 previous wars. But the humans did not do what they expected. Instead of Charging toward the station, the human fleet spread out. They formed a ring around the entire system, blocking every escape route. Then they settled into position and waited. Hours passed, then days. The humans did not attack. They just sat there watching. What are they doing? Kesix asked nervously. They are waiting for us to come out, they said. They want us to leave the protection of the station. We will not do that. We will stay here where we are safe. Will we? Therak gestured at the supply reports on his console. Nexus Prime has enough supplies for 6 months, maybe a year if we ration carefully. But the humans do not need to attack. They can simply wait. They can sit out there for as long as it takes. Can you do the same, Kesix? Can our soldiers sit here for months watching the enemy circle, waiting for the blow that will eventually fall? Kesix did not answer. He did not need to. They both knew the truth. The Velroni were not built for waiting. They were conquerors, warriors. They needed action, victory, glory. Making them sit and wait while the enemy prowled outside was torture. On the 5th day, Thorak received a transmission from Admiral Tanaka. Her face appeared on his screen, calm and patient. She did not look like she was in any hurry. Hi, Commander Thorak, she said. I trust you are comfortable in your fortress. What do you want? Admiral, I want to explain something to you, something that you still do not seem to understand. She leaned back in her chair. You think this is a siege? You think we are waiting for you to run out of supplies so we can attack? That is not what is happening. Then what is happening? We are hunting you. This is how my ancestors hunted prey on the plains of Earth tens of thousands of years ago. They did not chase animals at full speed. They did not try to catch them in a single sprint. They simply followed hour after hour, day after day. They let the prey tire itself out. They let it panic and make mistakes. They let it run until it could not run anymore. Tanaka smiled her cold smile. You cannot run anymore, High Commander. You are trapped, and now we will wait. We will wait until your soldiers lose their minds from boredom and fear. We will wait until your officers start fighting among themselves. We will wait until your entire fleet tears itself apart from the inside. And then when you are weak and broken and desperate, we will finish what we started. This is not war. The growled. This is cruelty. No, Tanaka said softly. This is humanity. You wanted to see what we were capable of. Now you are seeing it. And before this is over, you will wish we had simply killed you quickly. The transmission ended. They stared at the screen for a long time. Around him, his officers shifted nervously. They had heard every word. They knew what was coming. Siege of Nexus Prime had begun, and humanity would wait as long as it took. 3 weeks later, the first Velthrani officers began to break. Arguments erupted on the bridge. Fights broke out. In the barracks, one captain tried to flee the system on his own and was immediately destroyed by the human blockade. The fear spread like a disease. Velroni soldiers who had never known defeat were now facing something worse than defeat. They were facing an enemy who would not even give them the dignity of a battle. An enemy who simply waited and watched while they fell apart. They tried to hold his fleet together. He gave speeches about honor and duty. He punished troublemakers harshly. He rationed supplies and enforced discipline, but nothing worked. Every day the fleet grew weaker. Every day the humans grew stronger as new Ships arrived to reinforce them, and every night Thyra dreamed of Admiral Tanaka's cold smile. The humans were right. This was not a siege. This was a hunt, and the prey was already dying. It just did not know it yet. 2 years had passed since the destruction of the human colonies. 2 years since the Velthrani had ignored the warning. 2 years since they had awakened something terrible. The Vthroni Dominion was falling apart. High Commander Thurak stood in the war room of Nexus Prime, surrounded by holographic displays showing the state of his empire. Red warning lights flashed across every screen, every system, every world. It was all collapsing. The siege of Nexus Prime had lasted only 4 months in the end, not because the humans had attacked, but because the Velroni had destroyed themselves from within. 3 mutinies had broken out among the fleet. Officers had turned on each other, fighting over food and supplies that grew scarcer by the day. An entire battle group had tried to surrender to the humans, only to be told that surrender was not being accepted. That had been the worst moment, when they learned that the humans had refused to accept surrender. He finally understood the depth of his mistake. This was not a war for territory or resources. This was a war of extinction. The humans would not stop until the Throni Dominion no longer existed. In the end, Thyrak had been forced to break out of the sea with less than half his original fleet. The escape had cost him another 200 ships. Now he commanded barely 200 vessels, scattered and demoralized. But that was not the worst of his problems. The 17 systems that the Velroni had conquered over 3,000 years were all in rebellion, every single one. It had started with whispers. Stories spread among the conquered species about what was happening to the Velrani. Stories about the humans who would not stop. Stories about the hunters who had become the hunted. Then came the human agents. Small teams of human special forces had slipped through lines. They made contact with rebel groups on a dozen worlds. They provided weapons, training, intelligence. Most importantly, they provided hope. Rise up, the human agents told the conquered species. The Velthrani are dying. Join us and you will be free. And they rose on world after world. Species that had been crushed under Vethrani rule for centuries suddenly found their courage. They attacked military bases. They sabotaged supply depots. They assassinated Vethrani governors. The Dominion's infrastructure was crumbling. Supply lines that had functioned for 1,000 years were now unreliable. Communications networks were being destroyed faster than they could be repaired. Beltrani soldiers were being killed by rebels they had once ruled without fear. High Commander, a communications officer, said nervously, "We are receiving reports from the 7th Fleet. They have been ambushed by human raiders in the Chorus system. They are requesting reinforcements." "What reinforcements?" The snapped. "There are no reinforcements. Tell them to fight or flee. Those are their only options." It was the same answer he gave to every request, because the truth was simple and brutal. The Velrani had no reserves left. Every ship was committed. Every soldier was fighting, and it was not enough. The looked at the holographic map of his empire. 2 years ago it had shown 17 systems under Velroni control. Now only 5 remained. The outer systems had fallen to rebellion. The inner systems were under constant human Attack the empire that had lasted 3,000 years was dying. High Commander, another officer said, the council is waiting for your report. They closed his eyes. He did not want to face the council. He did not want to explain how everything had gone wrong, but he had no choice. I will be there shortly, he said. Veltroni ruling council met in a secure chamber deep within Nexus Prime. There were 12 members, each representing a powerful faction within the Empire. They had ruled together for centuries, making decisions that affected billions of lives. Now they looked like frightened children. Tell us the truth, High Commander, said Counselor Vithic, the oldest member of the council. His blue-gray skin was wrinkled and pale. His fore filled with fear. Can we win this war? They stood before them, feeling their eyes on him. He had given many reports to this council over the years. He had delivered news of victory after victory. He had never delivered news like this. No, he said simply, we cannot win. The council erupted in shouting. Some demanded explanations. Others demanded that Thorak be removed from command. Others simply denied that his words could be true. The rack waited for the noise to stop. When it finally did, he continued, the humans have more ships than us. They have more soldiers. They have more resources. But those are not the reasons we are losing. Then what is the reason? Counselor Vithic asked. We are losing because we do not understand what we are fighting. Theor pulled up a holographic display. It showed the human fleet spread across multiple systems. Look at them. They have been chasing us for 2 years. Their ships are held together with improvised repairs. Their crews have been living in cramped conditions for months at a time. By every logical measure, they should have gone home long ago. Why haven't they? Another counselor asked. Because they cannot. Because stopping is not something they are capable of doing. The humans are persistent predators. This is not a military strategy. It is biology. It is evolution. They will pursue us until one of us is destroyed. And they are incapable of being the ones who are destroyed. Then we must negotiate. Counselor Vic said we must offer them something they want. I have tried. The said I have sent diplomats. They were turned away without a meeting. I have offered reparations. The humans did not respond. I have released all human prisoners as a gesture of goodwill. The humans sent a message thanking me for returning their soldiers to the fight. The council fell silent. The reality of their situation was finally sinking in. There must be something, Counselor Vithic said weakly. There must be some way to end this. The thought of Admiral Tanaka's cold eyes. He thought of the warning that had been given and ignored. He thought of the 2.3 million human civilians who had died because he had wanted to send a message. There was a way, he said quietly. 2 years ago, before a single shot was fired, the humans asked us to turn back. They warned us what would happen if we proceeded. We laughed at them. We called them primitives. We killed their children. He looked at each counselor and turned. There is no way to end this now. There is only the end, and it is coming. The council session continued for hours, but nothing useful came from it. Plans were proposed and rejected. Strategies were debated and discarded. In the end, everyone knew the truth. There was nothing they could do except wait for the end. But word of the council's despair spread quickly. Within days, the remaining fleet knew that their leaders had given up hope. Morale already Shattered, collapsed completely, ships began to desert, captains took their vessels and fled toward the edges of the galaxy, hoping to escape the human pursuit. Most were caught. A few managed to disappear into uncharted space, never to be seen again. The conquered species, sensing the weakness of their masters, increased their rebellions. Velroni military bases that had stood for centuries were overrun by former slaves. Throni soldiers were captured, put on trial for their crimes, and executed. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Ambassador Kelix of the Confederation of Aligned Worlds traveled to Earth to speak with the human government. The Confederation was a group of peaceful species who preferred diplomacy to warfare. They had stayed neutral in the conflict, but they were becoming alarmed. At its scale, you must stop this, Krillix said to the human leaders. The Velroni are defeated. They no longer pose any threat to you. Continuing this war serves no purpose except destruction. The human response was delivered by General Morrison himself. Ambassador Morrison said calmly, "We gave the Velroni every opportunity to avoid this war. We sent them a clear warning. We asked them to turn back. They responded by killing 2.3 million of our civilians, including women and children. They laughed as they did it. But that was years ago," Krillix protested. "Surely you have achieved your revenge. Surely enough blood has been shed." "This is not about revenge," Morrison said. "This is about making sure this never happens again. Every species in this galaxy needs to understand something. If you attack humanity, there will be no negotiation. There will be no limited response. There will be only total war until one side is destroyed. The Throni are going to be an example, a permanent reminder of what happens to those who harm our people." Krillix stared at him in horror. "You would destroy an entire civilization just to send a message? The Velthroni will not be destroyed," Morrison said. "Their species will survive. We are not monsters, but their empire will end. Their military will be dissolved. Their leaders will face justice. And for the next 1,000 years, when any species considers attacking human colonies, they will remember the Velroni. They will remember what we did to them, and they will think twice. This is not justice," Krill said. "This is cruelty." Morrison leaned forward. His eyes were hard and cold. "Ambassador, let me ask you a question. How many times have the Velroni invaded your space? How many times have they threatened your people? How many species have they conquered and enslaved over the past 3,000 years?" Kix did not answer. The Confederation had been careful to avoid the Velroni, knowing they could not win a war against them. "You never stopped them because you could not," Morrison said. "You let them terrorize the galaxy because you had no choice. Well, we have a choice. We have the power to end their empire forever, and we are going to use it. When we are finished, no species will ever have to fear the Velroni again. Is that not a good thing? Is that not worth the cost?" Krillix left Earth without a treaty. He reported back to the Confederation that humanity could not be reasoned with. The war would continue until the Velthroni were completely defeated. The Confederation debated what to do. Some members wanted to support the Velthroni, others wanted to join the humans. In the end, they decided to do nothing. It was safer to watch and wait. But privately, many Confederation members were relieved. The Veltroni had threatened them for millennia. Now Finally, someone was doing what they had never had the courage to do. Someone was ending the threat forever. They would never admit it, but they were grateful. To the humans, on Nexus Prime High, Commander Therak received one final visitor. She came alone in a small shuttle that slipped through the remaining Belthrani defenses without being detected. She was not a diplomat or a soldier, she was something else entirely. Her name was Executive Jean, and she represented a faction within the human government that did not officially exist. Her job was to offer deals that could never be discussed publicly. Met her in his private quarters. He was alone. He had sent away his guards, knowing that this meeting could not have witnesses. High Commander, John said. She was a small woman with short gray hair and eyes that revealed nothing. Thank you for seeing me. Why are you here? To offer you a chance to save your species. The laughed bitterly. The humans have already made clear that surrender is not accepted. Formal surrender, no, but there are other ways. Jean sat down across from him. The human government wants this war to end. We are winning, but victory is still years away. We would prefer a faster resolution. What are you proposing? Simple. You turn over every member of the ruling council. You turn over yourself. You order your remaining military forces to stand down. Exchange. The Valroni species will be allowed to survive. Your worlds will be occupied. Yes, your military will be dissolved, but there will be no genocide, no mass executions. And the council members, they will face trial for their crimes against humanity. The outcome of those trials is not guaranteed, but it is better than watching your entire species destroyed. They considered the offer. A part of him wanted to refuse. A part of him still believed in Throni pride, Throni honor, Belthrani glory, but that part was very small now. 2 years of war had crushed it almost completely. If I accept, he said slowly, my name will be remembered as the commander who surrendered, the commander who ended 3,000 years of Throni power. Yes, John said simply, it will be, but your species will still exist to remember it. That is more than many conquered species can say. You are asking me to betray everything I have ever believed in. I am asking you to save your people. John stood up. The offer expires in 1 week. If you refuse, we will continue the war until there is nothing left to save. The choice is yours, High Commander. She left. The sat alone in the darkness, thinking about everything he had done, everything he had failed to do, everything that had led to this moment. He thought about the warning the humans had given. He thought about how he had laughed at it. He was not laughing anymore. In the end, he made the only choice that would let him sleep at night. It was not a brave choice. It was not an honorable choice, but it was the right choice. He contacted Executive J and accepted her terms. The Valroni council members were arrested and transported to human space. The remaining Valthroni military forces were ordered to stand down. The war was not over, but the end was finally in sight. When Admiral Tanaka received the news, she nodded once and said nothing. She had known this moment would come. She had worked toward it for 2 years, but there was no joy in her heart, only a cold, empty satisfaction. Her daughter was still dead. Her grandchildren were still gone. No victory, no matter how complete, could bring them back. All she could do was make sure their deaths meant something, make sure the galaxy would remember, and they would remember. For 1,000 years and beyond, the final battle of the HFY War took place above Prime, the home world of the HFY species. It was a beautiful planet covered in vast purple forests and silver oceans. For 3,000 years it had been the heart of the greatest empire in the galaxy. Now it was about to become a symbol of that empire's end. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Unrelenting, watching the human armada emerge from hyperspace. Around her, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. 2 years of war had turned them into veterans. 2 years of pursuit had forged them into something harder than steel. Admiral, her communications officer said, all ships have arrived. The fleet is assembled. Tanaka nodded. She looked at the tactical display, counting the ships under her command. There were over 2,000 of them. When this war had started, humanity had fewer than 300 warships. Now they had built an armada that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Every shipyard on Earth in the colonies had worked around the clock. Every factory had contributed. Every citizen had sacrificed. This was what humanity could accomplish when it was truly motivated. This was what happened when you gave them a reason to fight. On the other side of the system, the V-Thrani defensive fleet waited. There were only 300 ships left, the last remnants of what had once been the most powerful military in the galaxy. Most were damaged, all were undermanned. Their crews had not slept properly in months. High Commander Theorek had kept his word. He had ordered his forces to stand down, but not everyone had obeyed. A faction of hardliners led by Counselor Vithik had rejected the surrender. They had gathered the remaining loyal ships and retreated to the home world for a final stand. They would rather die than accept defeat, Theorek had explained. When he gave the humans the intelligence, they believed that HFY honor demands it. Tanaka had not cared about HFY honor. She had simply thanked Theor for the information and ordered her fleet to advance. Now she watched the Velthroni defensive line on her tactical display. 300 ships against 2,000. It was not even a battle. It was an execution. Admiral, her tactical officer said, the Velroni fleet is powering weapons. They are preparing to attack. Let them come, Tanaka said. All ships hold position. Wait for my command. She wanted the Velroni to make the first move. She wanted the galaxy to see that humanity had given them every chance. Even now, at the end, she would not fire the first shot. The Velthrani did not wait long. Their ship surged forward in a desperate charge, weapons blazing. It was a brave attack. It was also foolish. The human fleet responded with overwhelming force. Thousands of missiles launched simultaneously, filling the space between the fleets with fire. HFY ships exploded before they could even get within effective range. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 30 minutes. When it was over, only 50 Thai ships remained, surrounded on all sides by human vessels. They had no weapons left, no shields, no hope. Tanaka opened a channel to the Velrani flagship. The face that appeared on her screen was Counselor Vithk, the leader of the hardliners. He was old and tired, but his eyes still burned with defiance. Admiral Tanaka, he said, I congratulate you on your victory. Now finish it. Destroy us. That is what you came here to do. Tanaka looked at him for a long moment this old creature had been part of the council that had ordered the attack on the human colonies. He had approved the deaths of 2.3 million civilians. He had laughed at human warnings and dismissed human threats. Now he was begging for death as if it was an honor. No, Tanaka said. Vithk blinked in surprise. No, what do you mean? I mean I will not kill you. Counselor, I will not give you the warrior's death you want. You will be taken prisoner. You will be put on trial. You will sit in a cell and watch while everything you built is torn down. And then when you are old and broken and forgotten, you will die alone. Meaningless. That is your punishment. You cannot do this, Vivek shouted. We are Velrani. We deserve. You deserve nothing, Tanaka interrupted. Her voice was cold and hard. 2 years ago you killed millions of innocent people because you wanted to send a message. Now I am sending a message of my own. The galaxy needs to understand what happens to those who attack humanity. Death is too quick, too clean. I want you to suffer. I want every species in the galaxy to see you suffer, and I want them to remember. She cut the transmission. All ships, she ordered, except surrender of the remaining Valroni vessels. Any ship that resists is to be destroyed. Any ship that surrenders is to be taken prisoner. No exceptions. Within an hour it was over. The last warships had been captured or destroyed. The defensive line around Veltra Prime had fallen. The home world of the Velthrani was now in human hands. Tanaka looked at the planet on her view. Green, purple forest, silver ocean, millions of Throni civilians who had taken no part in the war, who were now at her mercy. She thought about what had been done to the human colonies. She thought about the bodies of children floating in space. She thought about her daughter and grandchildren killed for no reason except to demonstrate power. For a moment she imagined ordering the bombardment, destroying the planet. Retaliation, eye for an eye, justice. But she did not give that order. All ships, she said instead, establish orbit around Veltra Prime. Prepare to receive civilian leadership for negotiations. Military personnel will be taken into custody. Civilian populations will not be harmed. Her officers looked at her in surprise. Some had expected revenge. Some had wanted it. Admiral, one of them, said carefully, the Velrani killed millions of our people. They showed no mercy to our civilians. Why are we showing mercy to theirs? Tanaka turned to face him. Her eyes were tired but clear. Because we are not them, she said simply. The Velrani believed that strength meant cruelty, that power meant destruction. That is why their empire fell. We are different. We are strong enough to show mercy when mercy is deserved. The civilians of this world did not attack our colonies. The children playing in those cities did not kill our children. They will not be punished for the crimes of their leaders. She turned back to the view screen. But the leaders, she continued, the ones who gave the orders, the ones who laughed while our people died, they will face justice, every single one of them, and the galaxy will see that humanity punishes those who harm us, but we do not become monsters in the process. That is how we win, not just this war but every conflict that comes after. We win by being better than our enemies. The occupation of Prime proceeded smoothly. Human soldiers landed on the planet and took control of government buildings and military installations. Velrani military personnel were arrested and processed. Civilian leadership was brought to negotiate the terms of occupation. There was no resistance. The Belthrani people had seen what had happened to their fleet. They knew that fighting was useless. More importantly, many of them were relieved the war was over. Their families would not be killed. Life would continue. The trials began 3 months later. They were held on a neutral station, broadcast to every species in the galaxy. Councillor Vivek and the other surviving members of the ruling council were charged with crimes against sentient life. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimony was devastating. High Commander Thyra was among the defendants. He sat in silence as witnesses described the destruction of the human colonies. He did not defend himself. He did not deny his guilt. When asked if he had anything to say, he spoke only once. I was warned, he said quietly. The humans told me what would happen if we attacked them. Their oracle told me. My own instincts told me. I ignored them all. I thought the Vethrani were invincible. I thought no one could stand against us. I was wrong. And because I was wrong, my empire is gone and my people are conquered. I accept responsibility for this. Whatever punishment you give me, I deserve it. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. He would spend the rest of his days in a cell, watching as the galaxy he had once dominated moved on without him. Councillor VTC was not so accepting. He ranted and raved throughout his trial, claiming that the Velthroni would rise again, that humanity would pay for their arrogance. His threats were ignored. He was sentenced to death, the only member of the council to receive that punishment. The execution was broadcast across the galaxy. VC died screaming, still believing that his species was superior. No one mourned him. Admiral Tanaka attended the closing ceremony of the trials. She was 70 years old now, gray and tired from 3 years of war. She had achieved everything she set out to do. The Velroni were defeated. The empire was dissolved. Justice had been served, but her daughter was still dead. Her grandchildren were still gone. No victory could change that. A journalist approached her after the ceremony. Admiral Tanaka, the journalist said, you have become the most famous human in the galaxy. You have led humanity to its greatest victory. What do you have to say to the species who are watching this broadcast? Tanaka thought for a long moment before answering. 3 years ago, we sent a warning to the Beltrani. She said we told them to turn back. We told them that we did not want war, but we would not accept submission. We told them that if they proceeded, there would be no mercy given. They ignored us. She looked directly into the camera. Now they understand what that warning meant. Now the galaxy understands. Humanity does not start wars. We do not seek conflict. We do not want to hurt anyone. But if you attack us, if you kill our people, if you threaten our homes, we will respond. We will hunt you across the galaxy. We will tear down everything you have built, and we will not stop until the threat is eliminated. She paused. The VTHRoni thought they could bully us into submission. They thought we were weak because we asked for peace. First, they were wrong. We asked for peace because we knew what would happen. If we had to fight, we knew what we were capable of. Now they know too, and every species that ever considers attacking humanity will remember the Velrani. They will remember what we did. They will remember why. The journalist nodded nervously. Do you have any regrets, Admiral? Anything you would have done differently? Tanaka thought about her daughter about her grandchildren, about the 2.3 million humans who had died in the colony attacks, about the millions more who had died in 3 years of war. I regret that it happened at all, she said. Finally, I regret that Thoroney did not listen to our warning. I regret that so many people on both sides had to die. But I do not regret what I did. I do not regret hunting them across the galaxy. I do not regret making them an example. Because of what we did, no species will ever attack human colonies again. Because of what we did, our children and grandchildren will be safe. She stood up to leave, then turned back. My daughter died on Colony 7. Her name was Akiko. She was a teacher. She taught children to read. Her students loved her. Her husband loved her. Her children loved her. She never hurt anyone in her life. Tanaka's voice remained steady, but her eyes glistened. The Velroni killed her because they wanted to send a message. Because they thought our lives did not matter. They were wrong. Our lives matter, and anyone who forgets that will be reminded. Humanity will always offer peace first, but if you refuse our offer, we will never stop coming. Never. She walked away. The journalist watched her go, knowing that he had witnessed the end of an era and the beginning of something new. Centuries passed. The Throni War became history, then legend, then a cautionary tale taught in militaries across the galaxy. The human doctrine, as it came to be known, was simple. Humanity will always offer peace first. If you accept, they are the most loyal friends you could ever have. If you refuse, they are the most relentless enemies you could ever face. No species tested that doctrine for over 500 years. The Velroni survived as a species, but they never recovered as a power. Their worlds were occupied for 3 generations before being granted independence. Their military was permanently limited. Their expansion was forever restricted. They became a peaceful people devoted to art and science and philosophy. They built monuments to the victims of the colony attacks. They taught their children about the war and the lessons it had taught them. Never attack humanity. Never ignore their warnings. Never underestimate their resolve. Admiral Yuki Tanaka died at the age of 92. Surrounded by family and friends, she had never remarried after losing her daughter. She had never stopped mourning, but she had lived long enough to see her work completed. She had lived long enough to know that humanity was safe. Her last words, according to those who were present, were spoken to a great grandniece who had asked what she wanted to be remembered for. Tell them I was a mother, Tanaka said. Grandmother, a woman who loved her family. Tell them I only became a warrior because I had no choice. Tell them that I hope no one ever has to make the choice I made. She closed her eyes and was gone. The galaxy remembered her as the woman who had hunted an empire across the stars, the woman who had shown no mercy to those who had shown none to her people, the woman who had made the galaxy safe for humanity. But those who knew her remembered something else. They remembered a teacher named Akiko who had never heard anyone. They remembered children who had never grown up. They remembered a warning that had been ignored, and they remembered that all the glory and victory and triumph in the universe could not bring back what had been lost. That was the true lesson of the Veltroni war. Not that humanity was strong, not that humanity was dangerous, not that humanity was to be feared. The true Lesson was simpler than that. The true lesson was do not start wars, because once they begin, they take on lives of their own. They consume the innocent. Along with the guilty, they leave scars that never heal and wounds that never close. The Velroni had learned that lesson, the galaxy had learned that lesson, and humanity had paid the highest price to teach it, but the lesson had been taught, and it would never be forgotten. In schools across the galaxy, children learned the story. They learned about the warning that was ignored. They learned about the hunt that followed. They learned about the price that was paid, and when they asked their teachers what the most important part of the story was, the teachers always gave the same answer. The warning, they said. The humans gave a warning before a single shot was fired. They offered peace. They asked for peace. They begged for peace. And Velroni said, no, that is the most important part. That is what you must remember. When humans offer you peace, you accept it, because if you refuse, you will discover what they are capable of, and by then it will be too late. The children would nod and write it down in their notes. And across the galaxy, in the silence of space, humanity continued to build, to grow, to thrive. They had proven themselves. They had shown the galaxy what they could do. Now they could finally rest, but they kept their ships ready. They kept their soldiers trained. They kept their eyes on the stars, because they knew the truth. Peace was precious. Peace was fragile. Peace had to be defended, and if anyone ever threatened it again, humanity would be ready. They would always be ready. They were humanity, and they never stopped.